But welcome everybody to our second town hall. We're so happy and delighted to be here with our panelists. And dear Bob, who has appeared, happy to see you too. Kermit is going to introduce everybody, but before we began that, we thought that we would pick up from our last town hall, saying that we did get your questions and comments and reflections and wished that we could have had the time to respond to them then. But there was one comment from a dear colleague and friend, Dorothy Dundas, and we wanted to bring her on so that her voice and the voice that she was speaking was tied in with what we're going to do today. So Shira, could you bring Dorothy on? Hi, Mark.
There it is. Do you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Dorothy, are you there?
I am.
Okay.
Shira, can we see Dorothy as well? There we
go. Okay. Okay, so last week you had made the comment, I'm feeling the tragic loss of life, with many details from the TV in New York City and around the world. I'm wondering how everyone is doing with this terrible and quite political loss of life. I was wondering, Dorothy, if you wanted to speak to that.
I do. I was troubled throughout the whole hour and a half that I didn't feel enough discussion about exactly that, about how certainly in this country, and I'm sure around the world, people are surrounded by friends who were very, very sick, some who are dying. And I've been in my house now for 58 days with my son's family and his children, very, very aware of all the tragedy that's surrounding me and all of us. And so I just was very disappointed and quite shocked that I didn't notice a lot of discussion about that fact. It seemed too intellectual for me. And I love open dialogue, but for me, right now in this world, the main feeling is tragedy, complete political corruption. Certainly in this country anyway, the political corruption is pervading everything as well. And I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say. And I'm really happy to see everybody here, some of whom I recognize, like Bob and Kermit and Louisa and Shira. Now I can't hear anybody responding.
Yeah, I heard your words, disappointed and shocked, and I felt touched, and I'm grateful that you have, that you're here bringing this present awareness of the tragedy that we're involved in globally. And this this town hall is inspired, is motivated, came to be to talk about how people with this way of responding are doing it. So we'll be talking about that. One of our panelists, Ramune from Lithuania, couldn't come. She might pop in, but I don't think so. But let's go. Let's open up to the panelists. Kermit will introduce them now, and Dorothy, thank you so much for coming. I think probably Shira will take you up, but your presence is right in our town hall, and visually it's wonderful to see you again.
Thank you as well.
Yeah.
So, hi everybody. We're very happy to have this panel. I'll just do a very quick introduction so you know who we're looking at. And if I could ask your panelists to just wave when I mention your name, so we know who we're hearing about. And I'll start with Alita Taylor. Hi. Is an open dialogue trainer and supervisor and the founder of Open Dialogue Pacific, an educational institute on the West Coast of the US. She is a licensed family therapist in California and Washington and experienced with families that are grappling with what some might call psychosis and other extreme states. She has an interest in near-death and dying experiences, and she works alongside Fletcher Taylor. Hi. Fletcher is a faculty member at the University of Washington and a psychiatrist, and since 2000 has published research on at the University of Washington since 2000, and has published research on PTSD, on sleep, on learning disabilities, and he co-facilitates open dialogue network meetings with Alita and other professionals, including peers. And Alita, Alita, going back to Alita, is on the board of HOPEnDialogue. Somehow that ended
One
up.
of the collaborators for this town hall.
Yeah. Jimmy Siliberto, did I pronounce right? Yeah. Is a psychologist, a psychotherapist, and a family therapist in Milan. In Milan, where he's a clinical supervisor of an association that offers a wide set of interventions to minors. He's also a supervisor and trainer in family therapy and mental health departments all over Italy. Yasmina Shak, hello. Welcome, is an accredited trainer in dialogic practice. She's a social worker and a psychoanalytic psychotherapist. Yasmin has been at the forefront of developing initiatives such as early intervention in psychosis services and primary care mental health services. Yasmin led the first open dialogue team to become operational in the UK, and in 2018 that team was recognized by the Royal College of Psychiatrists as the Psychiatric Team of the Year. And Charmaine Harris, hello. Manages 3 mental health services for One Place East, a London charity, and she is founder of Peer Dialogue, which is a trauma-informed peer dialogical service offered to survivors of relational trauma. Charmaine also is an in-house open dialogue trainer for East London NHS Foundation Trust, and is an open dialogue specialist practitioner for the Odessi research study. So welcome all. And perhaps just to get us started, and I mentioned this when we first met, as we know, open dialogue meetings often start, are called together because of a crisis, which we're certainly in right now. And some of the history of learning to do open dialogue in Tornio, they found that by responding immediately, as we're trying to do, and in the midst of a crisis, rather than waiting for it to somehow resolve into some other constellation or circumstance that might be harder to bring change to, one of the inspirations of doing this the way we're doing it right now is to, in the midst of the crisis, find what it is we're learning and share what we're learning about how to work, but also, I think about what exactly is the learning that we think we might get at this time that we can share, that might bring change to the world in the future. And maybe one other way to put it is, as we say with open dialogue meetings, what is the history of this meeting, and what are we hoping to accomplish? What would make this a meeting what would make this a beneficial meeting for you all?
If I may start. Well, first I would like to thank all of you and Luis and Kermit for hosting us, and all the colleagues that are here, because I think that more than ever now, we are in the great need of sharing experiences and staying with the awareness that these are times more than ever, maybe, where we need to stay, and we need to stay with differences. We need to stay with different points of view, different feelings, and allow our feelings in terms of practitioners, in terms of clients and family members to come out and to have voice. I think, from as far as I'm concerned, from what I have been experienced, is that compared to what we were talking about in the last town hall, that these can be the most dialogical time ever. But at the same time, what I am experiencing is that fear can also narrow the different point of views, the different voices that one feels entitled to bring. And so I think that, yeah, that having these moments where just sharing our different experiences, our different voices as human beings, as clinicians, as family members, and so on, can really help us to stay in this moment of great uncertainty. And yeah, maybe this is what we usually ask our families to do when we work with them, to stay in the uncertainty. And so now it's kind of a global open dialogue where all of us is asked to stay in uncertainty. So thank you for creating this opportunity to stay here together.
Thank you. Thank you, Jimmy. I share some of those thoughts and feelings, in that there is a commonality across lots of different forums, and when I think it's the commonality across the personal and the professional. So it's like what we're going through at the moment, and Dorothy's voice is staying with me from earlier on. We're in the midst of something that is quite scary, and we're unsure and uncertain of where this will go and what will happen and how it will impact, not just in the present time, but also at a future point when we're no longer sitting in a pandemic, but what happens after that. And there's a lot of uncertainty, and we just don't know. And it's a time where we're having to sit with a lot of uncertainty about what the future will bring. And when I was listening to Dorothy, I was physically feeling the anguish and the distress, and I feel that on a daily basis with the people that I work with, whether that's colleagues or whether that's our clients, or whether it's when I'm at home with my family. It's something that's invasive in all parts of my life, and I feel like I'm learning to accommodate that that's part of my life at the moment, and how what's within my gift is how I respond to that, I think.
I'm holding on to something that Dorothy said about, and now there's silence. And one of the things that I've realized working dialogically whilst COVID has been taking place was that I thought, oh my God, I do silence so well as a practitioner, and I really don't. I guess for me, COVID has felt very intrusive. It's felt something that I've wanted to shut out. And I've really connected with the people that I've been working with, a bit like what Yasmin was saying, but also with my family. There's been no shutting this out for us. I guess for me, it's taught me that I need to go back out there to the school of hard knocks and get practicing on the silence once more.
I'd like to keep silent on that, but I guess what to say about that, Charmaine and Yasmin and Jimmy and Dorothy, I'm worried that we will forget the importance of this time, and I worry when people say we need to get back to normal, because to me, this is almost, I don't know if the metaphor is the right word, but it's like the world is sort of showing us as a family, similar to when we are presented with a family with someone in crisis, that, we want to fix it. We want to solve the problem. We want to get them better. Instead of what I've learned working dialogically is to listen to what the crisis is for everyone. And I want to mention the politics that Dorothy mentioned, because I'm in the same country as she is, and there's a lot of loss for a lot of people who are not being acknowledged. Their pain is not being acknowledged, and the deaths are not being acknowledged, the isolation, and we seem to be continuing with some commercialization, and the news keeps having the same kind of like rhythm that it used to have, where they have the weatherman and they have the and that's disturbing, because I think something different is called for here, and that's what I appreciate, Louisa and Kermit, you bringing this idea of having a conversation about it together. I think it doesn't really matter how we get through it. To me, it matters that we meet each other in it, in a way.
Yeah, I was thinking along the same lines, and I love this dialogue and being introduced to open dialogue. I'm kind of a newcomer in the past year or so to open dialogue, and it flies in the face of everything that I was taught in my traditional medical education. And it's about time. And I think that's one of the things about it that I love, and that scares me, is I'm being asked by this uninvited guest called COVID-19 to listen, as Dorothy's challenged us to do, to other people's misery. And to dare to do that. And that's the power of silence. No more clever things that I might say or do. It defies all that. It's a beautiful and stern lesson, but it is lovely.
First off, I'm very touched, Fletcher. I know, because I know your work, what a deep place that comes from. And I share it also in the work that we've done. And it's also, I want to acknowledge also some of the response that we got last week was probably the strongest single response was to the quality of the dialogue, to the space, which I assume means the space, the silence that was allowed for thoughts to develop and for people to be heard and for new ideas to really grow in that silence, which is, I think, a core part of the open dialogue experience, or the dialogue experience. And but at the same time, I'm getting a couple of questions that might be relevant here. I was asked, how can, I'm just going to summarize the question basically is, how can we, the audience, people who have an interest, a stakeholder interest in this, support us, people that we're representing on the panel as doing the work, to be change agents in a world that cannot hear them yet. How can, the question is how to help us keep going, how to help us be brave and take the risks that we're taking. But I want to add to that as well another question that came in at the same time from Tyler Joseph, who mentioned that sometimes quiet is violent. And I know for a lot of people being invited into open dialogue meetings, I'll just throw in here, I think it's always important that attendance in open dialogue meetings is by invitation, not coercion. But nevertheless, a lot of people have a hard time coming to open dialogue meetings because they do experience silence as being violent. So I think the question of how to support us, how do we support each other to do the work, it seems pretty close to that challenge of how to make silence safe, how to make dialogical meetings, how to make a safe space for people to be able to sit with each other in silence while the meaning that they need to find arises together.
It's really interesting because earlier today I had a meeting with a few people. It wasn't a network meeting, but it was a meeting for people just to have a space to reflect. And in at least 2 minutes of that was a long silence. And one of the women had said, "This feels painful. Someone needs to talk." And it was really interesting because they then expected myself and the other facilitator to kind of bring in some dialogue. And I found myself kind of lost for words. It was like I'd got stuck in the silence itself. I feel like there's been a lot of reactiveness in myself that actually I found myself really not responding. It's just reacting. And when somebody said something about silence can be violent, I was also connecting with this idea of fear, as was said earlier, and the threat of attack, and not really knowing how to make this situation better, which is one of the things as a person inside, as a human being, that I have a tendency to want to do. But this isn't. I'm a cripple. I can't do that for this. I feel very powerless as a practitioner, as a person, as a neighbor, as a friend, as a mum, So I guess that's one of the things I'm sat with about this idea of powerlessness that we feel as practitioners. And I guess, how can other people help us? I guess just to remind people like myself that we're doing this together. This isn't on our own. We're all in this together. For me, that would be really helpful.
I have the blessing of being able to be in the training that Charmaine is one of the trainers in. And I have felt that the peers, the people with lived experience, were some of the most were the most powerful voices. So whoever, Joseph, I think, asking the question, I'm not sure, was it Joseph that asked the question, how can we help? No, whoever it was, I can't see the chat, but
Tyler Joseph.
Tyler, your voices keep us awake and feeling, and so that's how I feel that you can help. Keep saying what you're feeling for those of us who are maybe thinking and not feeling sometimes.
I have a feeling of wanting to bring together a few thoughts on this. Silence. Someone might experience that as violent. Another might experience that as powerlessness. Another might experience that as anticipation or allowance in different moments. And also the idea that we have to do something that, Fletch talked about, and that actually one of the questions too in this I heard was, what is the history of this meeting? And I wanted to bring to everyone's awareness the idea that we can change our mind about things. And Jimmy had an interview with Jaco about a month ago that I read that inspired me so much about how Italy was responding at the time, or how his team was responding to people, where we don't know, like, whether to come into the clinic or not, or whether to go to work or not, or whether is it safe to go to their house. And so I loved hearing Charmaine say, I same as I feel all the time, like, oh, I'm good at this, and oh, I'm not so good at this. And so, because this is a live thing, dialogue is like not stagnant. It's something that we're always called in the moment to be in it. And I can't even know what it is without someone else. So the meaning of it actually is co-created. And I'm also having this funny feeling like I have to say intelligent things, but I'm glad I really don't, because
You're off the hook.
I'm just feeling all of these things now, and it's nicer to do it with my body instead of reading from something.
I think maybe it's about redefining intelligence.
Yeah.
I must say that, connected to this, that I think that in these months I have experienced how powerful is the availability, the fact of being available for people, the fact of being available for expliciting the fact that we can allow ourselves to say we don't know yet how to go on. And I think in a way this for the emergency that came up so quickly, for example, where where I live, all of a sudden, a lot of contexts found themselves in this opportunity to sit together and say, we don't know what to do. What can we do? And what was great, what I have experienced is that once you really create the opportunity for people to experience the fact that there are others who are available, and there are contexts where we can all have voice, even the people who were not usually entitled to have voice, because usually there are hierarchies, the managers, the mayors, social workers, the psychotherapists, and so on. And usually, like, socially, it's given for granted that they know what to do, and they usually give like advices. In these situations, what I experienced is that once you say, okay, we have the opportunity to just meet and talk about what's going on. I'm there for you. And what I've experienced is that, a lot of people, after hearing that I'm there for you, kind of self-reorganized and say, okay, let's try, let's see what we have. And let's see if our resources are enough. Let's see if maybe I need the help of someone else. Let's see if I have to call someone else again. So it kind of fostered a virtuous circle that, of course, did not solve the problem, the COVID, or all the feelings and the losses that we had. But I don't know, I experienced the experience of the people thinking and realizing and remember that they have the opportunity, starting from themselves, to look within themselves, to look for help, to change their minds, to say they're vulnerable, to say that they thought they had an idea and that they just changed their minds because they were too afraid or something like that. And I think, this might, in terms of, for example, the questions we were talking about, what others can do, what can we do to help each other. I think that maybe this moment is in a way spreading, fortunately, not only the COVID, but also this idea of getting together and say, we don't know how to go on, what can we do? Not just in the clinical settings, but in the human settings, because it's human experience.
Jimmy, while you were speaking, you said, when you were saying we don't know how to go on, right before that, Ocean, one of our people who are not visible but are chatting, said, those who've experienced prolonged isolation have the expertise in this crisis. Let us help you. Thank you for that.
Also,
she says, she or he says, please stay.
And also, Jimmy, somebody else said, what I wanted most as a patient was to know that the therapist is real. If there's not enough of your pain shared, I cannot find my footing. I cannot be real either. Silence can be a privilege. Equalizing is long overdue. And I'm remembering something that you spoke about when we talked about doing this meeting. We talked about the experience of, well, maybe you can pick it up from there.
Yeah, just to add a few words, of course, creating this context to explicit whatever we feel, more than ever, it's worth it's huge for us as therapists. I mean, it's not just giving the opportunity to others, to our clients or family members of the people we're working with, but also entitling ourselves to say, okay, I told you that last time, but now I'm feeling, I don't know, in these times, I'm feeling fear, I'm feeling that I'm worried, and like also to make object of conversation some feelings that we have and we are feeling. The moment you were talking about Kermit, like a few days ago when we talked, it was right this way when I think it's now more maybe than maybe in the past, like to allow ourselves to relate as human beings and to let our clients to say our human part. And I think is that is when families actually like look at us as human beings, is that like we co-create this this human relationship that it's healing for the human relation itself. I don't know if it's clear what I'm saying. So maybe in these terms, I talk about being available for ourselves, being available for the others, and being available for the unknown also, I think.
I think. Okay.
I was just thinking, and a few things have come into my head as everybody's been talking and contributing. When we think about polyphony of voices, I feel like there is another voice that is starting to inhabit me from this experience. And that will be a voice maybe that informs me going forward with what I learn from this experience. And the other thing I was thinking about is some of the work that Jaco's done recently around that emotional attunement and rhythms with each other. And I feel I'm having to learn a new way of attuning to people. And it's still a bit awkward, the dance that we have. I'm still stepping on toes, and I still feel like I'm not sure how I'm getting this right or wrong, or is it okay to not know? So it's all feeling a little bit awkward at the moment, because the attunement is still developing and emerging as we grow and learn together, all of us, how to respond. And as we were talking about earlier this week, the use of different mediums to communicate with people that isn't just in the room in the moment. It might be over Zoom or Skype or the telephone, and how do we attune differently? So I feel like I was wondering, why am I so tired all the time at the moment? And I think it's because I'm having to respond differently and in different ways, and people are having to respond to me in different ways. And I'm having to learn every day, and every week that I go on, there's something into work, there's something new to think about, to consider, to reflect on, to be silent about, possibly. And yeah, it's as we talk about in dialogical ways, new meaning is emerging all the time. And we can't preempt that, and we can't jump forward to understand. We have to be in the moment for the new meaning to emerge. And that's where I feel I'm at the moment. And maybe a bit like other people have said, not feeling I always do a great job of that at the moment, but that's okay, because actually getting it wrong is part of the learning, really.
Yeah, I was thinking about what messy work this is. Being able to listen and hear all the voices in the room in our lives, and it's with the circumstances around this pandemic, it's kind of kicked it up a notch for me too. I've I felt like, oh, I'm the sympathetic person, and I can listen, but it's taken it up a notch in the sense that, like Jimmy, what you were saying, your experiences in Milan and Yasmin, yours and Ken, my feelings are running closer to the surface, and I'm letting people in, and I don't know who's being helped more. The people I'm supposed to be helped to help versus my being helped in sharing, this common situation with the pandemic. It's what a great teacher. What a curse. What a bloody curse. I think Ray said in the last town meeting, something like that. Bloody hell of an opportunity. And I thought that was interesting because it reminded me of that, what we're talking about now, all of us. And I'm benefiting from it. And it's scary as hell in kind of a lovely sort of way to be that vulnerable with family, friends, and clients, that sort of thing, everyone.
I was hearing Dorothy say, for it to be truly healing, there has. I'm sorry. It's an intimate dance.
I also can't help but be aware that for professionals, it can be very risky and very dangerous to reveal emotions, to be human. I like to say to clients, we, or people that I'm working with or lucky enough to come in contact with in a crisis, we met because you have a crisis and I have a license, but now we're just humans trying to figure out how to be human together. And I like to come from that position, but I'm also aware that it can be very, very risky in a lot of ways. Expressing emotion, allowing ourselves to be human can be perceived wrong. Sometimes can be perceived accurately, but not necessarily lead to a good place. So more on the theme of how to help each other stay safe and do this work. How do we do that? I think that if we bring about more dialogical work, then we can hope for that. But on the way to it, this is something we have to figure out how to do.
If I may say something, I think I have been thinking about my work in the last months, and in a way, I can say that maybe through the dialogical approach that have been like a way followed and interiorized not only as a therapeutic approach in these years. And if I look at the process of the relationship with my clients, I would dare to say that nothing's changed in a way. I mean, the shape changed maybe over, but the process was the same. Maybe it's more. I thought that it was different, more for me than for them, I guess. Of course, like it changed the way to meet up, like with someone we just have like 10 minutes call every day with some video Zoom, or with I can meet someone in person. But actually if I go at the base, like nothing's changed. The fact of staying there and like dealing with another crisis, let's say, in unknown situations, and talk to them and stay, okay, how can we go on, and not, let's say, thinking about a strict schedule and being able to be flexible and so on. So, and maybe this is connected also to the title of this town hall, no? So in a way, like for me, the richness as of the dialogical approach is that it's so based upon the process that, okay, now it's called COVID-19 and it has its own specific aspects, but the process is the same. And also as if I think about me as a person, like needing for reassurances, what I did is like to seek, like what we did it was to talk with friends and meeting up with the friends of the trainers training in Espo, and meeting up and say, what are you doing, how are you feeling, and so on. So if I have to think and say something, is that that in a way everything's changed but nothing's changed, paradoxically.
I really like that, Jimmy, because it's like a returning to the heart of what matters, of what we're doing, instead of doing something really kind of measurable. In a way, we're just returning to the moment of, being with another, being with difficult times. I remembered there was a question that someone asked, and I'm not sure if this is right, but they were asking how to make a safe space for dialogue. Am I right about that? What occurred to me is the word attuning that Louisa used, that I feel is much of the time gets lost with our regulations and structures of care that care of mental health care. So the way that I try to hold on to making space for dialogue is to go slower, to not know longer, to ask all of the time, like, what is right for everyone here, who belongs here, to try to move towards generative conversation rather than answers, to try to say that I don't know what will make this safe. So what is it for you? Maybe let's tune in for a minute and ask what you need now that might be different in 5 minutes or tomorrow. Or so that's a challenge in our fast-paced us and them, economy. Dialogism doesn't really fit there. So it's up to me as an individual to challenge it in a way that is inviting, in a way that is curious, instead of it being, hey, let's have some dialogue now. It's more like it's a paradox. Yes.
I was thinking about that too, and I was thinking about snow. Yesterday, I a letter from a somebody that has been seeing me for a couple of years, and she's in her 70s, and she's home with her husband, who's also elderly, and she wrote this poem, and it's a different kind of a dialogue, which is what made me think of snow, because her poem had to do with it was snowing in her room, in her bedroom, and it was sticking to everything and covering everything with this mantle of snow, but it wasn't touching her. And in this poem, she talks about how she goes outside, and shouts to her neighbors, is it snowing out here? Or is it just snowing in my room? And in that moment, it was snowing in my room too. So I thought it's a beautiful thing that this dialogue, especially when we're having to quarantine like this, can take so many beautiful forms, including a poem sent, with a 3-day delay by the U.S. Postal Service. It just struck me.
Ray Waddingham mentioned Alita, that she loves the phrase, what you said, to not know longer. What a great phrase, Ray said. And yeah, she said, I love that, smiley face. And yeah, I think I've often thought a lot of this work is about holding on to the not knowing for as long as we can, until it becomes clear that we have to do something, or what to do becomes clear. Charmaine, we haven't heard from you in a little while.
Vulnerability on something like this doesn't come easy, but I'm just connecting with the snow. It was really powerful for me. I'm also connecting with this idea that just how much we're carrying, all of us doing this stuff, all of us sharing this stuff, anyone out there having to do some deep-rooted work in these times. And how difficult it is. I was connecting with this idea. I wonder if my colleague's going to watch this, but we started Monday with a family of 8 that had never engaged with our service on one speakerphone, and we had to give them all space. We had 50 minutes to give everybody a voice. And how difficult this stuff is. But how connections are still made. I mean, I was so shocked when my colleague and I was kind of asking people what they felt of our reflections and how they still connected with it, how that snow still happened for them. But for me, it was like being in Barbados. It was totally the opposite. I guess it's when you know how a modality is, and what you're doing now, I'm kind of calling it these days dialogical improvisation. I know I'm doing something dialogical, but it's very improvised. I don't think I've got any more than that at the moment.
Thank you, Charmaine. That was really, I felt that. My heart started going when you were talking. And I felt emotion rising in me and a little bit tearful. Yeah, I think it's connecting me with stuff and that I need to connect with at the moment. And I'm wondering if it's okay to share something a bit personal. So we are, you know, we're not just work beings. We're personal. And I'm on Monday. I'm taking my sons to their grandfather's funeral, who died from COVID. And their dad is traveling separately because they, you know, we live in separate houses, and they can't hold their dad. They can't travel with their dad. They're not going to be able to hug their dad at the funeral. And they're saying, we don't know how we're going to respond. We don't know, because our natural response is maybe at these times of grief is to express it physically with each other. And it's not something that they'll be able to do with their dad. They could do that with me because we live in the same household, but they can't do it with their father, who lives in a different household. And some of so the impact on the personal is quite profound, and it's been with me a lot the last few weeks, and it's made me think what it's like when you are separated from your norm and disconnected from your norm. So if somebody is admitted to hospital or is, you know, forcibly admitted to hospital and can't have the connections that they normally have and don't have the responses they normally have in their everyday lives because they're in this different environment and this different way of being in hospital, and how difficult that can be to relate to and come to terms with the different ways of being. And I feel very anxious about it because I don't know how we're going to manage it. I know we will manage this new way of being at a funeral next week. I know we will get through it. But there's so many questions in my head, and I'm thinking, don't answer them, Yasmin, because you don't have the answers to them. What we have to do is go and be and see what emerges in our feelings and our emotions and our expressions to each other, and how that will happen. And we don't know. And it just made me reflect on how often when we're working with people, we're working with stuff that we don't know. And particularly if we take people out of their norm and place them somewhere that's not normal for them, how difficult that can be as well. So that's a bit of a ramble, really. But Charmaine, you triggered something in me that brought that up for me. So I thought if it's come up for me, then I wanted to share it.
I'm so glad to hear, Yasmin, about this. I'm really glad you shared it. Thank you. Touches me.
Yes, Yasmin, if you're not monitoring the chat, I think you might like to.
Kind of asked people not to monitor the chat so that we stay together, but this feels like all of you that are here are with us right here. So, and you are. I mean, we're looking at you, we're feeling you, you're feeling us, we're feeling each other.
And we can give you a copy of the chat afterwards too.
Thank you.
I was wondering, Shira, if there's a way to bring people's faces, because we don't have so many people here now. I wonder if we could bring people's faces when they bring a question. Is that possible? Is that easy? Or come?
Yeah, that would be possible. I could invite people to share their videos if they would like to.
Yeah, I think that would be nice. How does that feel to the rest of you? Yeah. Okay.
I'd like to say something about death that I feel is missing, I think, from our, that's why I was so grateful, Yasmin, to hear this experience, because I like to do things that bring us closer to the experience of death in wherever it is, the impending death, or we're all going to die, right? We're all going to die. And I think we have a society that is in a lot of denial and has been for kind of centuries. And for the past 90 years, 60 years, I don't know, the funeral industry, the hospital industry has taken us away from the process of caring for our family members at the end of life for many good reasons, you know, disease and lots of benefits, I suppose. But this crisis of the virus spreading, which Fletch likes to call it an uninvited guest, but I don't like to give it so much personification because it's actually part of nature. It's a natural phenomenon that came from the wild into our domesticated life. So it's like important for me to try to, in my dialogical training, bring death talks, even if they happen by video, you know, into the room. And I had the idea when this was happening, because a patient of mine told me a story, and then I started to hear multiple stories after that. But her family member made the choice to not go visit their dying mother because, you know, she didn't want to spread any chance going into the nursing home, you know, of anyone getting infected. And then that particular story touched me so much that I thought, this is happening everywhere. This is happening everywhere. And so I put out a notice, you know, like whatever hospital wants to provide some laptops, put it in the rooms of people who are, you know, dying. And I'm happy to help facilitate, you know, something like this, something like where everybody's on the screen and, you know, what needs to be said and what would you like? Because we don't know when a person is dying, but we're all dying. So when is it important to do this, and who is moved to do this? And we can do this. This is part of our work as social workers and therapists. And, you know, so there is isolation, but there is also opportunity to have conversation and bring the generations, you know, together and create memory. We're in the memory making business at the end of life. And those moments are not gone. They're different.
Thank you, Alita. Jasmine. There have been some beautiful things being said as we were sharing, and I'd love to. I don't want to direct. I don't know how to bring the voices in. Is anybody, Ocean or Ray or Bob? Would you like to come on and say what you've been sharing?
So Bob's been sharing. Bob and
yeah,
this is things other people have said.
Yeah. If you do want to, you could go to your chat and let Shira know that you'd like to communicate directly by coming on, or even just your voice.
Yasmin, are you reading the chat?
Yeah. Okay, so Ocean would like to speak, Shira.
Am I on? I'm sorry, I don't really know what to say. I just thought I don't want to not offer, because I know when I've chaired groups and no one was willing to jump in, sometimes it was. So I'm just I'm very thankful, and I just wish there was a way for us who have experienced extreme isolation to give back. So I'm the one who asked the question about how can we support you. I really feel like that's a piece that's been missing from my life, is being valued enough to be allowed to be the helper. And I wish there was a way that we could bring in my strengths as a long-term patient for you, because I need your front man face to make changes in a system that hurt me, and I maybe you need me too. It would be nice to be needed for a change instead of always being the patient. So that's kind of been my thoughts the last couple of weeks. Anyway, I don't know. Thank you for letting me speak. It's kind of cool.
Ocean, I think the APOD training's made for you. Maybe you could come join our team. I'll just throw in too that one of the things that changed my life from what it was, whole different career, to this one, was I did a peer counseling thing called co-counseling, and where there are no experts. It's just people being there for each other and trading time. And for me, the key moment was, when I had to stop talking about whatever it was that I was struggling with and start listening to somebody else. And that moment where I thought, I don't know how to do that. I don't see how I could. But then the moment came where somebody was sitting there wanting the time, needing the time, and it was my job to do it. Just the fact that I found that I could was addictive. It's what made me want to do. It's what put me on the road to being right here now.
I want to say thank you, Ocean. The ocean came through our tears to both me and Fletch sitting here. So that was very important. Thank you, Louisa, for bringing the voice of somebody. It made a difference. I think there was no person repeating your comment. Your voice came in, and thank you.
Could I just share with Ocean? It's beautiful what you're saying, and I work with lots of people who ask for their voice to come in. People that I've worked with, and wherever I can, I ensure that happens. And the voice is always beautiful and powerful. And I always say to people, I do lots of presentations and training, and where I can, I'll do that with people who've had your experience, Ocean, because nothing speaks more powerfully than the voice of experience. And I can come from a place where I can have a really snazzy presentation and lots of statistics, but when that person with me stands up and speaks, they hold a room because there's an emotional connection with what's happened. And particularly, Ocean, I like it when some people I've worked with go back onto the wards where they've been patients, and they can reflect back to the teams there the experience, and hopefully that those teams learn from what it's like to have somebody reflect back to them. This is how it felt when I was in your environment under your management and treatment. I think whenever it can happen, the voice of experience has to be an important voice to be heard. I'm not as eloquent as you, Ocean, unfortunately.
I just wanted to say what a body of experience. I think you just rocked this whole panel, really. And I guess my role was someone who actually manages user-led organisation services and works within peer roles. Sometimes it can be really difficult to kind of find a way to think, why am I doing all this? You know, what am I doing this for every day? They're not easy roles to take on. They are on the verge of extinction, and we really have to fight for our rights in different places. But what you just brought has just made me kind of just give me a kick back in my stomach to say, put your big girl's pants on and get out there and continue to fight. So thank you so much, Ocean.
Big smile back at you, Ocean.
Mm-hmm. Jasmine, I wondered if you had seen the comment about people wondering if it might, I think it was Ray.
There were actually several people.
Yeah, several people. Did you see that? We could read it. And what Yasmin says is really important. It reminds me of the different ways we manage the space between. Ray, do you want to say this yourself? Just reaching out to you.
Actually, Ray mentioned that her children are busy in their rooms.
Okay, so could severing, COVID is severing the physical aspects, and this has such huge consequences, implications, stretching to feel the emotional closeness and help our loved ones feel our closeness too. And then someone else said, I find it unimaginable that their sons can't hug their father at the funeral. I really wonder if the risk that might come from a hug between sons and father would be worth the solace that comes from the touch.
I think when I talked about this other voice that's come in, it's like this voice of distancing has become a norm voice in our heads, and we're almost indoctrinated with that voice at the moment. If ever we turn on the radio or the TV or social media, it's keep your distance. If you go in the supermarket, keep your distance. If you're going to work, keep your distance. It's a constant message. And I know recently when my son was unwell during the night, he sent me a message saying, keep your distance, Mum, I'm not well. Whereas normally he would come and find me when he's not well. So it's a way of being we've learnt to be. Whether we can unlearn that way, or when we will unlearn that way, I don't know. But I know it's something that's become part of my being, because not only because I'm being told to do that, it's then become just like the dialogical way of being is my way of being now. We've had such a lot of messages telling us your way of being now has to be at I would say a physical distance. I don't like calling it a social distance. It's a physical distance. So you can still have the emotional connection with the physical distance. And the sense I get is if my sons were to hug their father on that day, which they may do, who knows, there will still be a voice telling them they're doing something wrong, even though it's the right thing to do. So it's those conflicting voices that are going on in our heads at the moment, because we've had these voices that have been introduced. They're not necessarily welcome voices. They're the state voices telling us. And again, I relate to what Ocean was saying before, that when the state intervenes and decides how you are going to be and how you should react, it starts to interfere with the normal way of being. And it's a lesson that I'm learning, actually, how interfering with people's normal way of being has a ripple effect that goes far beyond the individual.
I'm wondering if we all are finding ways to connect to compensate for the physical limitations, if we're reaching beyond. I used to do a lot of phone work, and I would put a lot of thought into trying to project myself through the microphone, through the phone, to the person physically. And I felt that was sometimes helpful. I wonder what we're finding in this time about that.
Also, I'm wanting to read something that Cindy said. Unless, Cindy, would you like to come on and say it yourself? If you would, you could. Shira, can you connect Cindy? I could read what she said. I think it's this. Right?
Yes, that one. It's
okay. I wish the framework for the gathering was more true to what I felt open dialogue was and is. It would be my desire that the panelists should include, at least as equals with an open mic, some of the voices of those who must speak from the chat room. And then, did I miss the reasoning for this? We didn't talk about it, but originally we thought about whether to invite people's presence in one of these rectangles. And then the first time we had so many people and so much going on in the chat, we didn't do it, but it has felt right. This has felt so intimate that it makes sense to have people be able to speak. So we have less than 10 more minutes, but if there's somebody that would like to come as Dorothy did or speak, please reach out to Shira in the chat, because she's the one that can connect us.
I do want to say that it felt there was a lovely quality of dialogue in the panel.
Yes.
And the minute we started talking about bringing in other voices, as much as that's a good thing to do, I did worry about sort of puncturing the space here. And I felt a change. I felt that that there's a certain sense of urgency and the technical challenges.
Did you all feel that, you panelists? Did you feel a change in the dialogue between you?
Always so messy, all of this. It's always messy.
And I know for me, it's such a challenge just to even keep up with the conversation, the chat and the questions, and also be able to pay attention to the dialogue. It's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah. Well, in this last bit, if anybody, I just want to offer that one more time. How many people are listening? There are 50 people that are listening. And Ray's saying it's very messy, but life is messy and we are wonderful in our imperfection. Yes, you're here. I think what we were thinking was at the end that we would again have the panelists reflect with each other. So anybody that has more questions or comments, we'll have them on chat. If you feel an urgency to be heard, let us know right now. Otherwise, we'll go back to reflecting as we begin to close our time together. So nobody is popping up saying, I want to speak right now. But so let's go back to reflections. If that feels okay, is that all right? Yeah? Okay.
Letting me. Sorry, I couldn't manage the unmute. Is it all right if I reflect with who I'm with? And I'll include all of you? I noticed a moment ago you wanted to say something.
I did, and maybe the moment came and went. But what I felt was a longing to hear all the voices including the ones who weren't on the panel. And technologically, I don't know if that's possible, but I'm listening.
I noticed your body moving towards the thing and trying to, and then trying not to interrupt. And so I just wanted to check in, but thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. My attuning was going on. And I also was really enjoying connecting with Jimmy and Yasmin and Charmaine, and it's okay that's so bumpy. It's okay. I think I this has been very nourishing to me this time. Thank you.
I would like to say that in the last part, I've been very silent. Like I was so resonating with what you all were so generously sharing, and I was enjoying this actually silence. So, and there's a part of me. Let's say there was a voice saying, it's going to be very rich later on, when you are going to settle and talk with your voices and smoke a cigarette and looking out of the window. And I think just wanted to really thank you. And I don't know how to describe it, the sensation I have. I just know that there are a lot of voices, and the other thing that I'm experiencing is how close we are. Like usually, like for when I am with other people, especially from different contexts, different countries, and so on, I pay attention to similarities, but a lot to differences that are very nourishing for me in some moments. But now, this connection about what we are all experiencing is really unique as far as I'm concerned. And I think it's a process. Fortunately, I think there are going to be more town halls, so I think that voices will be connected to and will be able to come up also in the future. But thank you, all of you.
I just wanted to say thank you to you as well, Jimmy, and everybody. It's been really lovely to connect with everybody on here. I was, as Jimmy was talking, I was drawing a heart with my eyes. I've got really bad nails because I haven't been to the nail shop in how long, but I was like drawing a heart, and it included, the chat group, it included everybody, and I'm really sat forward in, and was speaking to a colleague, Kathy, and she was giving us an intervision the other day, and she was saying, when you're connected, when you're really there, and I felt really there today. Thank you to everybody that's made this happen. Thank you.
Just echoing what everybody has said. I'd like to say thank you. I came into this meeting quite anxious, and I felt my stomach turning about an hour before as I was preparing myself. and getting quite anxious, thinking, oh, I don't know what I've got to say, don't know what I've got to offer or contribute. And but once I got into the dialogue with all of you lovely people, something natural just flowed, and there was just a natural rhythm connecting, and it really felt like I was in a room with you all together rather than across the world. And it blows my mind when I think actually we're connected across the world, when actually it just feels so intimate. So I'd like to thank you for this intimate time we've spent together.
Thank you all. I'd like to mention that we are planning a meeting on June 5th. We're planning to do these on the first and third Fridays of the month moving forward. And the meeting 2 meetings from now on June 5th is going to be focused on the Hearing Voices Network. And so in answer to some of the suggestions that we make sure to have more people with lived experience, that panel will be all or almost all people with lived experience. And actually, I think it's fair to say that Louisa and I count ourselves in that way. The next one on May 15th will be with Russell Razak, and who else do we have?
Regina, and we're not probably Ramone. We'll keep you all posted about it. But thank you so much, dear panelists, for bringing your hearts and minds and bodies in this way here. We've got so much love pouring in and out of all these different chats and hearts, and it feels really wondrul. And thank you for coming, and everybody that attended. We felt you and felt just has felt like in my language, a big blessing, a redirection. So I guess our time is up, but we kind of started late, so I have a tendency to linger. But I just please know how much we cherish you all.
And if the panel will all stick around for a few minutes, so we can unwind together. Thank you.
Yeah. Good night to those that are in London.
I want to thank everybody on the back end for making this happen. Bob and James and
Miranda, Shira.
Yeah, Shira.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I felt kind of a halo of love. And I think the color is violet. And it also includes, I've been feeling these positive vibes from the listeners too. And it's an honor to be here with everyone. Thank you, Louisa. Thank you, Carmen, for making this happen.
We are co-creating. Yeah, and our collaborators, HOPEnDialogue, our Rafaela, who's going to come back on, I think. Yep. RethinkingPsychiatry.org, Grace is saying. Take a look. Open Excellence.
And HOPEnDialogue, did you think?
I did, and also not open source, Open Society.
The Open Society.
Open Society gave the grant that's allowing for the infrastructures to continue, both for HOPEnDialogue and for this journalism in Mad in America. So thank you, all of you, all over the world too. So I guess, thank you everybody that's saying thank you to us.
I think we should let everybody get on with their day.
Yeah. So we'll hope to see you or hear you and maybe see you in 2 weeks. And please continue. You can continue to post comments and reflections and questions on the Mad in America Facebook page is it a web page or a Facebook? I guess it's a web page for the town hall. And we're trying to figure out how to get responses to those questions. I mean, how we're going to be circulating a conversation on the webpage, and we haven't figured that out yet. But every thought, your thoughts and reflections are really welcome and will be responded to as best we can.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao. Please post the ongoing Grace is saying. Just a sec. Please post the ongoing info so we can include it. Okay, we will do.
Rethinking, right? Okay.
Yeah. The invitations are up on www.madinamerica.com to each of these town halls. So one can find one's way that way. And they are going to be happening, well, maybe not always every 2 weeks, but that's what we're aiming for. Do you want to say anything about it, John?
This coming week on June 7th, on Thursday, not June 7th, May 7th, we're putting together a panel that John Reed instigated, is a fair word to use, with Peter Kinderman and, I'm sorry, my head is...
Laura Delano. And we're not...
Karina Hawkinson, and maybe, and there are other notable people, noteworthy people, who to talk about the danger that we're facing of this crisis turning into something that's being called a mental health crisis, and the opportunity that we have to reframe that, as it always should have been, as a society that's responding to the crisis of people who are suffering. And so, yeah, we're trying to gather our forces and be aware of what's happening to make sure that, the suffering that everybody's experiencing doesn't get turned into a medical problem for some of us. Kathy Flaherty from Connecticut is going to be on the panel.
Yeah. So we'll very, very much look forward to being with you again in a couple of weeks, hopefully. Or maybe just a week if you come on the one that Kermit just mentioned.
On Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern time.
That'll be listed on the Mad America website if you forget. So
bye.
Bye for now.